All right, so I am your girl, Princess with the Real, with 2HotRadio. Y'all already know I don't do no small talk, so we're gonna go ahead and jump into it. I want you to let the people know who you are, where you from, and how we can find you.
I'm Miss B. I am from Detroit, Michigan. I am currently residing in Alabama. You can find me on Instagram at Miss B's underscore management or Facebook, Brandi Christine.
Okay, so today I wanted to sit down with you and get your story, your life story, because a lot of people, are inspired and motivated by hearing other people's stories, and a lot of people go through a lot of things in silence, not knowing that other people have been through the same things or going through those same things. So I'm big on getting the story from the person's mouth themselves instead of getting it from other people. So I would like to start with, first of all, how was childhood for you growing up? Did you grow up in a single parent household or did you have both of your parents?
Um, I grew up in Detroit and another city which is located in the center of Detroit. It's a very small city called Highland Park, Michigan. It's about maybe 7 or 8 blocks long, but it sits in the middle of the east side and the west side of Detroit. So I grew up there and in Detroit.
Okay.
As far as my household with my parents, I grew up in a one parent household most of the time. Sorry. Most of the time I raised myself or my elder sister attempted to help or my grandmother or I was in the system.
Okay, so let's just back it up. So, at what age did you start raising yourself and what happened to put you in that situation?
Well, I started going to the system when I was 11 months old.
Okay.
I was in the system basically all my life. Um, my mom was a single mother, but she was addicted to drugs, and it resulted in me going to foster care along with my sister when I was 11 months and she was like 8.
Okay.
I stayed there for about 3 years. My sister was taken out 48 hours after she got there.
What do you mean she was taken out 48 hours after she got there?
She went home to family.
Okay, so a family member. Okay, so at 11 months old, you was 11 months. Your sister was 8 years old. Your mom was on drugs, and she gave you guys up to foster care. And
No, we were removed
you were
because of
removed
her
from the home.
actions while she was addicted to drugs.
Okay, so
And
someone reported her.
yes, we were left at home by ourselves, and the neighbors called the police, and we both were taken to foster care, and I was forced to stay there, and my sister was removed a couple of days later and was sent home to family.
Okay, so all right, and now at 11 months, I know you probably couldn't, understand it in that moment of what was going on, but as you were growing older, do you remember, having a connection with your family, in elementary school?
Maybe sometimes during holidays. I was close to my mother's brothers. They struggled with the same issues, but they were more responsible. So 2 out of 3 of my uncles attempted to step in to be a father figure or some type of parent. They would go to my parent teaching conferences whenever I wasn't in foster care. They would make sure I was fed and stuff.
And now,
And
how long were you in foster care?
I was in foster care until I was about 3 years old, and my mom ended up getting married to a man who was retired from General Motors. He owned his own home. He was reliable. He was fit for DHR or CPS, whichever people call them. And because he was stable, and my mother married him, he was able to adopt me out of foster care.
Okay,
Um,
so at age 3, you stayed in foster care from 11 months to 3, so not a little bit over 2 years. And then you went back to live with your mom and her husband.
Yes, for about maybe a year, and then I ended up with another family member. Well, my sister's aunt.
Okay. And so what happened? Do you remember what happened that you ended up going to live with another family member?
Um, yeah, I remember going back and forth to my sister's aunt's house a lot more than normal. Normally with one of our uncles, he was very close to her. So um, one day my mom just told me that she was going to the store, and I asked her to bring me something back from the store, and she never came back.
Oh wow. And now, so one
So
thing I did hear you say was, your sister's aunt. Is it because you guys have different fathers?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. And now, so, experiencing that, and I know you're getting emotional just talking about it, it is a cleanser as well, just discussing it and getting it out there, every time you speak on it. So speaking on this is, you went from moving back into your mom's house, being joyful that you was back there, and then for her to go to the store and not come back. And now you're moving in with your sister and her aunt. How What is this like for you at this moment?
I just kept asking when was my mom coming back from the store, and I think I was about 4, and I started Head Start and kindergarten, and my mom never showed up. Not for my first day of school, not for anything. So my sister's aunt, she really stepped in as a mother figure. She didn't have any children. So she was really raising me and my sister because my sister's dad was in prison.
Okay, so at this point, you and your sister are back together.
Yes, at her aunt's house after she was already there from when she left foster care. And then I went, like, I would visit my sister, go play, spend a night. But eventually one day, that's when my mom said she was going to the store. And she never came back. So I just kept asking when was my mom bringing my snacks back because I asked her to bring me candy back from the store and I never got it. So she was really nice. My sister's aunt, she treated me like her own daughter. She treated my sister like her own daughter. That's how she addressed us to everybody, that we was her kids. In my opinion, for her not to have any kids and to take on responsibility of us, I think she did pretty good. For someone that has no experience to be a parent.
So at 4 years old, you're now living with your sister's aunt, who is now taking you as well as your sister in, as her kids. And now you're in school and stuff. So, let's talk about, elementary school for you and what that was like.
Well, I started kindergarten with my sister's aunt, and I believe first grade, and then after that, my mom ended up calling and saying that she wanted her kids. This was like maybe 2 or 3 years later, and by this time, my mom was a truck driver staying in Virginia Beach, and she had a whole nother family.
What do you mean
And
she had a whole other family?
she she was taking care of someone else's child. She had a boyfriend and was taking care of his child and just left us.
So how did that make you feel, when your mom first contacted you guys and reached back out and said, she wanted y'all back in her life, she wanted y'all back. How did you feel in that moment?
I was excited, but it was like everything happened so fast. It was a phone call, and then the next thing I know, all my stuff was being packed, but my sister wasn't going.
Okay, so you made the decision, or did your aunt make? Who made that decision?
I
That
was only like in the first grade, so my grandmother, which is my mom's mom, and my sister's aunt made the decision that we were her children, and if she wanted her kids, to give her her kids. But my sister, like I said, was raised by her father's side of the family, so her grandmother started getting sick, and she refused to go to Virginia with me and my mom because she wanted to be there with her grandma. So she stayed behind, and I went.
okay.
And it
So
was okay for a while.
Okay, so y'all was gonna say as a first grader, how was that? Because I know as a child, kids don't really understand everything in that moment of what's going on, but you kind of know a little bit. So how was that for you, leaving your auntie's house, who made you feel like she was a mother figure, and then going back to actually live with your mom?
I was happy to go with my mom, but it was just more traumatic events.
What do you
I
mean
didn't
traumatic events?
um like in the beginning it was okay, I was still confused on why another little girl was here and she was taking care of her, and we were stuck with other family members, and she actually had a home for us to come to. So eventually I got used to, I guess, my stepsister, because that's what they had us calling each other. But then her father started getting abusive to my mom, and it got really bad one night, and it got really bad. And I was only like 8 years old at the time, and I had to jump on a man's back to help my mom.
Mm.
And I had never experienced like domestic violence, or at least I didn't remember besides then. So all I could do was just ask her neighbors to call my grandma, who escorted me there in the first place, to come back and get me. So she did. She came back immediately. It was like from Michigan to Virginia. It seemed like she was there in like a couple of hours. That's how fast she got there.
So
And
what
she took,
was that experience like for you, that made you feel like you had to protect your mom? What was going down? Walk me through that a little bit.
well, it was Christmas time, and my mom's boyfriend had visitors and family over. And my mom had left to go to her friend's house, but she had cooked all of the holiday food. And she told her boyfriend to make sure that me and his daughter both ate. He made sure that all his friends, his family ate, and made sure that his daughter ate and didn't feed me. So my mom got upset, and it got physical, and he tried to hit my mom over the head with a brick that came off our fireplace, because it was made out of bricks, but it was kind of loose. So when I seen him getting ready to hit my mom with the brick from the fireplace in her head, I just dove on his back. I didn't really think about it. I just seen somebody trying to hurt my mom.
Okay, okay. And so after that moment, okay, what transpired? With the police call? What happened?
No, the police wasn't called. The neighbors assisted us in contacting my grandmother. Apparently my grandmother had already went to the neighbors, because of my mom's history of not being reliable and stuff with her kids. So we didn't know that, but my grandmother had already warned the neighbors that if something was wrong with her babies, meaning me and my mom, to call her, and she will come and get us. So I was close to one of the neighbors. It was a white lady, not to be, you know, um, racist, I guess, but we were really close. So I ran to her house, and she was the lady that my grandmother had told to call her, but I never knew that until that happened. So she called my grandmother, and my grandmother came with a robe on, rollers, a scarf, all the way from Michigan, and we were in Virginia Beach. She got there pretty fast. Um, my grandmother told us that we had to go back home to Michigan, and my mom was refusing to leave because she didn't want to leave her boyfriend's daughter there, because he went back on the, like, after everything happened he left, but he was a truck driver, so we knew he had went back on the road. And his daughter was still there. She was underage. She was only 13. My grandmother refused to take her back to Michigan with us, even though my mom had power of attorney while her dad was on the road. And my grandmother said no. Probably because she didn't want my mom to have any connection with him at all, considering what he had did. But the little girl didn't have any family. She didn't have a mom. She looked at my mom as her mom. But we was forced to leave her, and a week later we got a call that the friend's house that we took her to until her father came back, her friend's father raped her. And we were only in Michigan like 7 days.
Mm.
And my mom was really angry at my grandmother. I think I kind of was too, because I just thought it was really wrong. She didn't really do anything to anybody. She was just a kid. So the guy got arrested. He was held accountable and stuff, but it still doesn't take away a child being, traumatized for no reason. Um, so after that, we stayed in Michigan for the rest of the time, basically. Um, while we was there, maybe like a year after we were there, um, because of my mother's and her friends' drug habits, I was molested.
Now let's back it up. So what age was this? And like kind of like 'cause I'm big on the story, the backstory, and I know it gets you emotional, but it's a good thing to release it. So I'm big on, the backstory of it. You say, because of the drug habit and you were molested. First of all, how old were you when you were first molested, and how did that transpire?
Well, I was 10. It was in the summertime, like in the 90s, like in 96. I still remember the day like it was yesterday, but my mom used to, like I said, she used to have friends over all the time. So when they wasn't like secluded in rooms, getting high or something, they would play cards and, they would drink, smoke cigarettes. So whenever they would play cards or play dominoes, I was always around. I never was around any other kids. I was always around adults. So, I used to be around while they were playing cards and stuff. And eventually I got tired because they were still playing. And the living room and the dining room is like an open, like you could see both rooms. There's no door to separate them. So I told my mom I was going to lay down on the sofa, which where she can still see me because she's at the table in the next room. And I fell asleep and I woke up to a very dark room. And back then we had like those TVs with the knobs on it. So if the channel didn't work, it was like staticky, black and white. So when I woke up, it was really dark and the screen, that's how it looked. And one of my mom's friends since high school had his hands in my pants. I didn't really know what to do because I was kind of in shock and it was dark and I was hoping I was tripping or maybe I was having a nightmare or something. So I kind of closed my eyes and was like, "No, I'm tripping. Maybe, maybe I'm having a nightmare. Maybe I'm asleep." But no, that's what was going on. And
So when you say you closed your eyes, that maybe you were having a nightmare, maybe you were dreaming. Um, what happened after that moment?
he seen my eyes open and he was kneeled down on his knees on the side of the couch. And when he realized I was woke, he just stared at me and continued to do it. And then with his hands in my pants. So eventually, we heard someone like walking around upstairs because our floors kind of creak because they was kind of old. So he ran off and ran into the other room where they were originally playing dominoes and stuff, and it was like a pallet on the floor. Why my mom or her friends would leave a grown man with a child and they're drunk and high, I don't know, but it was a pallet on the floor in the next room. So when he ran over there, I ran up the steps. My pants were still unbuttoned. My pants were still like I had on shorts, so they were still kind of down a little and unbuttoned and unzipped. And I beat on my mom's bedroom door, and I just kept saying, "Somebody's downstairs. Somebody's downstairs." And she said, "Yeah, I know." I told him to lay down because he was drunk and he was trying to leave to go home, but he was too drunk. So I told him to take a nap to sober up before he leave. So I said, well, he had his hands in my pants, like he's molesting me. So my mom, she had like this look on her face like she was in disbelief. But my godfather was in a room with my mom and he heard it. So he came out and he beat the guy up kind of bad and he kept screaming, "So you like to touch kids? You've been around this child all of this time and now you want to touch her." And because he watched all of us grow up. He watched my sister grow up. By that time, my sister was 18. He had watched her grow up. He watched me grow up. He had been my mom's friend since like high school. And I don't think anyone ever seen this coming because everybody was just in shock. And after they beat him up, while they were beating him up, my sister, who was asleep throughout the whole altercation, she came downstairs and she seen me crying and she asked me what was going on. I explained it to her, and she kind of like cuffed me in her arms and like stuck my head in her arms so I couldn't see what was going on. I guess to try to prevent me from being traumatized from them, beating them up. And they threw him outside. I never seen him again, but it's traumatizing. I never really got help for it. Uh, Mainly because I didn't know if my mom was going to get in trouble. I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know what to do.
After that took place that night, the next day, what was it like for you?
Um, Honestly, I left home and refused to go back. So then I became I forget what they call it when they say juveniles don't listen, delinquent. So then I became a delinquent juvenile. Then I started running away. Um,
So you ran away. So this happened when you were 10 and
yes,
you ran away the next day.
yeah, because
Okay.
I didn't
So where
want to
did
be
you
there
run
anymore. Well, I had a lot of like, friends from school and stuff. They kind of knew what was going on because, they would like see abuse or neglect just by because we're all still on the same street or, in the same neighborhood. So a lot of us was going through stuff like that. So we would kind of console each other in private or when we got to school or something. So one of my friends' mom, she wasn't supposed to, but she let me come there. And then my mom found out and she called the cops. So you called the cops on me because I ran away from being molested, but you didn't call the cops on the molester. So
Okay.
I refused to go home once again. So maybe like 2 days later after that, I was still at my friend's house and we were walking to this place called Hackett Field where all of the kids in the neighborhood go. It's like a recreation center. That was the only thing we had in our neighborhood. Um, and my sister and my family was outside and they seen me like crossing the street because I have to go past our street to get to the recreational center, but technically I was a runaway. So when I crossed the street, my mom and the people on the street seen me, and my mom started screaming and telling me to come home, and I wouldn't. So my sister walked down there, and because I thought me and my sister was close, I trusted her to come down to talk to me for me to tell her why I didn't want to come back home. Instead, I was slammed on my ribs and sent to Children's Hospital because I refused to come home by my sister.
Your sister?
Yes.
So there was no communication, no conversation. You just came
She
up.
said, "Come home." I refused, and I was manhandled, slammed on my ribs. They were fractured, partially broken. I could barely breathe. My mother was arrested for it when she did not do it and was taken to jail for 48 hours and classified as a child abuser when my sister did it.
And now, how old were you and how old were your sister at this time? I know y'all have an 8-year difference.
At this point, I had to be about maybe um 10 and a half. Like this was during the summertime. So this was still after the incident. It was still the summertime.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. So your sister was 18. And
Yes. Yeah, she at that point she was basically grown with a child.
okay. So you're in the hospital. Your mom got locked up for the 48 hours. What happens after all of this?
I went to foster care.
Okay, so you didn't go back. You went into foster care, and now what was that experience like? Going into that first foster care home.
Well, that was the second one besides when I was a baby, but for me to remember the first time would have been then. And I was sent to a foster home with parents whose kids grew up in our neighborhood and grew up with my mother. I was never supposed to be placed anywhere where my mother was able to locate me because of abuse, because I was refusing to go home, because of neglect. So one day, while I was at the foster home, a lady walks in the door and she immediately says, "Oh, that's Michelle's daughter. How do you know me?" And I'm literally like 3 hours away from where I grew up. Like, I don't even know. I didn't know these people, but they knew me. So as they started pulling out pictures, I realized that I grew up with their nieces and nephews and their grandkids and stuff. So immediately, all of us started falling out. I don't know if they didn't like my mom. We all started eventually falling out to the point that the lady who was my foster mom, she was raising all of the grandkids. They were teenagers. They all tried to jump on me. So, I ran away from there. I jumped out of the bathroom window, slid down the roof, and ran away.
Now, how long were you there before that happened?
Maybe like a month.
Okay, so you're
Maybe
still
like a
10 years
month.
old. You're still 10, and you're running. You another runaway.
Yes.
Okay.
So at this point, it's like a 22 mile. It's very far. I walked from 22 mile to 8 mile on foot. By the time I got there, it was really dark, really late. And the man that had adopted me, I knew how to get to his house. So that's where I went. And I don't think anyone was there. I went in the backyard. I got a bike from out the backyard. And then I rode the bike all the way from 8 Mile to Holland Park, Michigan. And the same friend that helped me before, her mom let me come back to their house again. This friend, her and her mother is Muslim, so the stuff that our culture or that we were raised in our household or our family, they thought about things differently. They seen things differently. So the mom didn't think she was doing anything wrong. She felt like she was protecting me, so she let me stay there. And once again, my mom called the police. Um, and then I ended up in a group home. And in the group home,
How old were you at this time? How long were you there before your mom found out and called the police?
maybe like a week.
Okay. So your mom was keeping tabs.
Well, it was a lot of people telling on me that was in the neighborhood, like, "Oh, I seen your daughter." I don't think it was intentional, but it's like they know I'm a kid. So I'm assuming that people were notifying my mom, like, "Oh, I thought your daughter was in a foster home. Why is she around the corner?"
Okay. Okay.
So I think that's where that came from. Because our neighborhood is really small, like I said. Highland Park is like 7, 8 blocks, so everybody knew everybody's business.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so I ended up going to a group home. I just kept going from group home to group home and group home. I hated the group homes. We had male we had males like juvenile COs that worked at these group homes and these lockup facilities. And they would sexually assault the girls. Some of the juveniles ended up pregnant by them. They even had to close down the women's prison because of the same thing.
So let's talk about some of your experiences through going through the group homes and why you moved from group home to group home to group home. Speak on that.
I kept running away from them, and then when they found me, they put me in another one. Or they would send me home, and I would run away for them to send me somewhere else because I didn't want to be there. So it's just
So
kind of.
let me try to get a better understanding of, okay, if your mom was, unstable to, unfit, why would they continue to send you back and forth to your mom?
It's the state of Michigan for you. I
And
don't know.
and then the other thing is okay, when it comes to the group homes, and this is just me trying to get a better understanding, when it comes to the group home, what was it that was causing you to want to keep running away?
Um, Most of the people that worked there really didn't care about us. Some of them would even tell you that they was just there for the check. You know, like I said, a lot of the male workers there, they were violating the juveniles. There was females that was pregnant that wasn't pregnant when they got there.
Did they
Um,
violate you?
no one that worked there, but a couple of years down the line, someone that worked for the government did.
Okay. So during that time, running away, being sent back home, running away, dealing with that, how was school life for you? Like,
I was always in and out of school. I mean, I was very smart in school, but I was always in and out of school because of foster homes, group homes. Um, so I just jumped from school to school to school up until um maybe middle school.
and now how were you able to stay in contact with those friends from elementary school when you were young and stuff?
Well, normally, we didn't really we had house phones back there, but normally all of us in our neighborhood, like I said, were in the same situation with our parents. We all just when we ran away, we just came back to the neighborhood. To be
Okay.
honest, we
And so
just
when you moved 3 hours away, how were you able to, did you and your friends stay in contact then?
not at that time, no, because I we were on 22 Mile, the foster home, and my friends were in Highland Park, Michigan. So that's that's a long way for a kid, So and I was in a foster home, so I didn't have any contact with them then. But when I ran away from that foster home, I ran back to the neighborhood where my friends were.
Okay.
Those were the only people that helped me.
Okay. And now you say in middle school is when, you started going to school more. What changed?
My grandmother stepped in. Um, I ended up having to get put on a tether because I kept running away. So my grandmother allowed me to come there to be on the tether.
And so what made them want to put you on a tether? Because based on, and this is just me again getting the story, based on what you stated, a lot of the times when you were leaving, it was because you were in bad situations and it was.
They didn't care about that. I was still classified as a delinquent juvenile, a runaway, insubordinate. They didn't care about that. So they put me on a tether because I kept running away.
And now, was there anything on records of the different situations that you have been dealing with throughout your lives from, the different homes you were in?
Yeah. See, with the state of Michigan, something I learned along the way is that they really don't care. They do not care about the children. They don't care if your child don't have a school to go to. They don't. Right now, today, the neighborhood I'm talking about, Highland Park, Michigan, has absolutely no schools. None. But
Okay.
yet you're quick to put all of us in group homes and prisons, but yet where's all of the resources to keep them from having to go that route?
Okay. So now you're in middle school, your grandmother took you in. The situation for you was getting a little bit better. Let's just kind of, speak on this moment for you in middle school, being able to attend school more with a family member. Was this a better situation for you? How did this, make you feel?
Well, I appreciated that my grandmother attempted to help me. I didn't really want to be there. I really just wanted my mom. I wanted my dad, someone I had never met.
So, okay, so before we get into this, what I'm hearing, and this is just me being who I am, is and then hearing your story is, was it the fact that you wanted your mom and your dad, possibly the reason why you ran away a lot from other group homes because you really wanted to be with your parents?
Yeah, I didn't want to be at that home where the incident originally happened at, which is why I originally started running away. But I wanted to be with my mom. I just didn't, I wanted my mom to get help, but I still wanted to be with her because that was my mom. So my mom would she would come around there so often when I was at my grandmother's house, but I did go to school. I was taking like key Swahili classes and different stuff like that. My grandmother used to make us wear like suits and button ups to school. My grandmother, she's not fully African American, so she has a lot of different morals and stuff. So when we were growing up, we had to dress like to school like we was going to work. It didn't matter if it was elementary school, middle school, high school. If she was actively in our life, that's how we wasn't allowed to go to school, like regular kids. We wore pantsuits like in middle school. So um, that was different. I enjoyed being with my grandmother, but I didn't want to be there.
Oh,
And then eventually, like I said, I was on a tether. And eventually, I just started feeling like my grandmother was tired of me being there, like she was tired of doing my mom's job. So I cut off my tether and I ran away.
okay, so what made you feel like your grandmother was tired of you being there?
Um, Sort of how when people make comments like, "Oh, the only reason I'm doing this is because your mom didn't show up," or "The only reason I'm doing this is because you're my granddaughter." Like, if you have to do all of that, I don't need to be here.
Okay. So
If you feel overwhelmed because you have to take on my mom's job, you didn't have to let me come here. I could have went to another group home or something. So, I was just one of those kids that if I didn't feel wanted, I left. It didn't matter how old I was. I'm not going to force myself to stay somewhere that I didn't feel comfortable or safe or people didn't want me there.
okay. So and now what age were you when you said, you know what, I'm cutting this off, I'm gone?
I was 14.
14. Okay. So now at this time, where did you go? Where did you run to?
Um, I ran to friends again, but they wasn't. It was like, I guess I can't really say friends because I really didn't know them that long. But as a kid, I considered them my friends, and we ended up getting in trouble, and I ended up in a lockup facility, called Adrian Training School. It is now closed down because of all of the complaints and stuff that I was talking about, along with the female prison that they send the females from that lockup facility to. So,
So what happened that caused you to get locked up?
I was in a stolen vehicle, and it's considered joyriding, I guess.
Your
Um,
friend stole a car and you was in the passenger seat joyriding.
we collectively did something stupid. I'm not just gonna put it on my friends.
Okay.
Um, I didn't say that when I got in trouble. I just got in trouble. No one forced me to do it, so I didn't like tell all my friends or nothing. So I'm the one that got locked up.
Okay.
So I didn't tell on anyone or anything, but it was collective. It was stupid, in my opinion. As now that I'm older, looking back on decisions I made just because I had a lot of stuff going on as a kid. So I ended up at a.
You ended up in a facility because you guys were out here joyriding in a stolen car. Now, how
Yeah.
did you get out of that situation?
I, they sent me to a lockup facility. I was there from the age of 14 until I was almost 17.
Oh, so you got okay. So okay, so I guess back it up. So at the age of 14, you got locked up for joyriding and stealing a car. Did your friends get locked up as well, or was it just you who got
Oh
locked
no, I was the only one in the like my friends had literally just got out of the car like maybe 5 minutes, long enough to walk up
up? Okay,
somebody's
so then you
porch.
were the only one found in the car at the time.
Exactly.
Okay, so at that time you got locked up. Um, did you contact family? Like, what was that process like? I know you said you did 3 years, but what was the process like of going to court?
Well, by me being a juvenile and I had By me being a juvenile and I had just cut off my tether, so they were already looking for me because I cut off my tether and then I got in trouble. So, so they were already looking for me. So once all of this happened and they arrested me, of course they had to contact the juvenile courts, and then that's how they figured out that I was the girl they was looking for about the tether.
Okay.
So I ended up having to go to court. They were really trying to charge me as an adult. In Michigan, they'll charge you as an adult and you could be 14. But, I ended up getting charged as a juvenile, which is how I ended up in the Adrian Training School, maximum security lockup facility for juvenile girls. The next step is the Port Huron. There was a prison there for women. They closed it down. So if they decided to charge whatever females were in that facility as an adult, you went to Scott's Correctional Facility.
Okay. So now, how was this experience for you being locked up for 3 years?
Well, I thought it was weird that females were on the same grounds as sex offenders. Every male that was on the grounds, they were in the lockup facility as well, but they were all sex offenders. Every last one of them. The girls, they were in there for like running away or, like I said, stealing a car or getting into a fight or something. But all of the boys, like, this is a juvenile lockup facility. Why is a young man 25 still here? And he's a sex offender.
But how
So
was that experience for you being in that lockup facility for 3 years? Speaking
that
of
is
your
how I got violated by a government official.
okay, so speak on that. Like, how long were you there? What kind of things were you dealing with, and what caused, what led up to that of you being violated?
Well, throughout the time that I was going to group homes and foster care, there was um, a social worker um, who was on my case for a while. And he was still on my case when I cut off my tether and stuff. So when I was transported to the maximum security facility, by him being an active juvenile probation officer and a juvenile social worker, um, he came to visit. And I was given an ultimatum on my freedom, to be quite honest.
And what do you mean?
When I was 16, I was emancipated. This was after I left agent training school before I turned 17. I was emancipated. The reason for that is why I was in the lockup facility. This man, the probation officer, he kept constantly coming to visit. This situation has been brought up before by my grandmother, and I denied it. But I also agreed to do this interview because I want to be able to narrate my own story, and it's up to me when I'm ready to tell people what happened, not my grandmother.
Okay.
So, he offered to help me get emancipated.
And this was before you got locked up?
This was while I was locked up in
Okay.
the training facility.
Okay.
Um, Whenever he would come, our meetings were private, like an attorney. Um, there were no cameras, there were no guards, no counselors, no one there, just me and him. I would get fondled, basically molested when we were in the room by ourselves. And apparently that was the cost of him helping me get out of the system because my family just kept leaving me every time I went to a foster home or they
So did
didn't.
you know that that was the cost up front? Like, was that something you guys agreed upon? Or was this just happening to you and you just went with the flow because you felt like this person was going to help you?
Honestly, I was looking for help and I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know, like, if they're leaving us in a room by ourselves and everyone else visits our supervised, who am I going to tell? If the other men that actually work in here are having sex with the girls in here, who am I going to tell? They're predators too. Like, this was.
Proposition you with this offer of, we do this and I'm going to free you? Or was it a situation of he was just doing this to you and eventually, like, I just want to understand how it started.
Well, the first visit, it was more like rubbing my shoulders, rubbing my arms. Oh, are you okay? Oh, we have to come up with a plan to get you out of here. And as the visits went on, it got more touchy feely. Then it's like, okay, can you like not do that? Oh, well, I thought you wanted to get emancipated. I thought you wanted me to get you a court hearing so that you can let these people know you want to be emancipated. So it was like every time I felt uncomfortable or I would give like a look like, what are you doing or whatever, it comes back to, so you must want to just rot in here because you know your family don't care about you. I'm trying to help you. So in a way, I really think it was manipulation to get what you want out of it because you know I don't have anywhere else to turn.
Okay. So
Um,
you feel like he manipulated you in that process of being manipulated, being abused. Through that process, he was saying he was going to help you. Was he helping you through that process?
I got emancipated.
So for 3 years of you being locked up, he was coming there for 3 years. And for that amount of time, you got emancipated when you were released or while you were still in there.
No, after I finished the term that I was required to do, I finished the program. So I had to go to a court hearing to see if the judge would allow me to be released. He was there. My grandmother was there. I don't remember if my mom was there or not. Um, and they agreed that I could be released. I had to be like on this curfew where I had like house arrest kind of. I could go to work and school, but other than that, I had to be in the house. And they would call and check to see if I was in the house. So he eventually found out that I was going to this computer software school. And he started asking if it was okay. He was asking my grandmother, is it okay if I pick her up from school, drop her off? And my grandmother looked at him like a mentor. He had always been there to kind of give my grandma advice, help me. So my grandmother thought it was okay. She didn't have a problem with it. So he would pick me up from school, and a lot of times my grandmother would ask what took so long because we stayed in downtown Detroit, like in these high-rise apartments, and the school was literally like in walking distance, maybe like 15 minutes. So for me to be in a vehicle, sometimes my grandmother would ask me what took so long, where were you? And I would lie, because I didn't know what to do.
And so
You
at
know,
this time, how old were you?
I was still 16. Like when I left, when they released me, I was 16 going on 17.
Okay.
I
So
had like maybe 5 months to turn 17.
16 going on 17, with what you went through being locked up and, feeling like, the guy was there supporting you, helping you get out. Did you feel obligated to do things with him at that point because he helped you? Like, I just want to understand because at 16,
Yeah, at that point, yes. Like when the situation first started, I didn't like I said, I used to always try to like, push him off or like, what are you doing? And then after I got released, I didn't tell him where I was going to school. I'm assuming my grandmother did because they talked a lot. And that is how he knew where I went to school. But a girl that I was locked up with, she ended up at the same school. We were very close. So when she started noticing that this was the same man that was coming to the lockup facility and he was coming to pick me up from school, she called the police. I didn't know she called the cops, but she did. But by this time, I had already left my grandmother's house because During the time after I graduated from the computer software school that he was picking me up and dropping me off from, doing weird stuff after school, I'm being questioned. Eventually, I graduated from the computer software school like a couple months later. It was like a state program. So it was only like for, I think, 90 days. So I graduated from there and it was time for graduation. I went out and bought my own graduation stuff because I'm so used to relying on me. So when I came back, my grandmother offered to buy the shoes. So she took me to get the shoes. But then when she showed up at my graduation, she said the only reason she showed up because she knew my mother wasn't going to show up. That hurt my feelings because if that's how you felt, you didn't have to come. Don't feel sorry for me because my mom not here. Be here because you're my grandmother and you're supporting that I'm still trying to push through and I'm still trying to finish school. So for you to throw up, oh, I came because I knew your mom wasn't gonna come. I left again.
But so here's the okay, and I get you went through what you went through. So my question is, do you feel like your grandmother could have felt a way that you never really wanted to be with her? You continued to run away from her. Do you feel like that was part of it, by her still trying to show she cared by showing up, but she was still in her feelings and emotions about how you treated her?
No, my grandmother was never upset with me or anything. She knew that all my behavior was coming from what was going on at home with my mom. She had the same issues with my cousins from, her other children. So she was used to having to take in her grandkids or step in or come bring us groceries because we didn't have food in the house. So she knew where it was coming from. She didn't like that we misbehaved at her house, but she knew why.
Okay.
So um, she wasn't, she was mad at my decisions, but she knew where it was coming from. So she knew it wasn't directed towards her.
Okay, okay. So graduation, grandma shows up. You get your certificate. Was it a certificate?
I got two certificates. I got one certificate for being the youngest graduate. I was 16 in an adult class because I had got my GED. Because I didn't have enough high school credits because I was in the lockup facility. So I got my GED, and the state, once I got released, they signed me up for the program. So they gave me a certificate for being the youngest graduate. I couldn't even get a job because I had to be 21, but I had the education. It was a computer software school. They taught us how to build software, how to fix computers and stuff like that. They taught us about PowerPoint, Excel, and stuff like that. And then, of course, we got the completion certificate for graduating for computer software. And I was proud of myself, because I had been through so much stuff. I was barely going to school. So for me to actually go to a school and actually complete it, I was proud of myself. And I don't really think my grandmother really meant any harm or like she was trying to throw daggers. I just think she was more disappointed that she knew my mom wasn't coming. But I took it hurt my feelings though. So
And was your grandmother the only one who did show up?
yeah. So I didn't say anything during the graduation. I appreciated that she was there, but it still hurt my feelings of
Okay.
what she said. So afterwards, about maybe I don't even want to say it was a whole month later, I decided to leave. Eventually, the police found me. Maybe a couple of weeks later, they took me to it wasn't a lockup facility. They took me to like a juvenile shelter where they help teenagers go into independent living. If
And at
you
this time, you were what, 17?
yes, by this time yeah, I was basically I was almost 17, yes. So
Okay.
like all of this stuff happened like so fast from when I got out. So I left. The police eventually found me. They took me to a like a juvenile shelter where like they had pregnant teens there. They help you get into independent living if you're awarded a state and you don't have like a family to go to, because most teenagers don't get adopted. So the state helps them go into their own house and help them get jobs and stuff to be independent. So while I was there, the only way I could do independent living is if I completed family counseling and individual counseling. That was never going to happen. The
What?
family counseling. The family counseling was never going to happen. It never did happen on any occasion, anytime I had family therapy. So I knew that I was never going to get out of that place. Like I got stuck somewhere else because I didn't have anyone. And don't get me wrong, like no matter what group home I went to or foster home, my grandma, she would send me like Christmas gifts. You know, if I called, she would answer. But it's like, where's my mom? And
And now at this age, at age 17, was your mom still on drugs really bad at this?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so your mom is still battling her addiction. Your grandma's doing what she can. She's older. It's a lot for her to take in a child and be able to raise a child and give you what you need. So, and now, you're in this facility that helps you to grow into being a woman, and taking your life to that next level. So, kind of discuss, how this was for you.
Well, we went to court. They agreed for me to go to independent living. I'm sorry, let me back up. I ended up, after I got to the facility, the man that I was talking about that was coming to the facility and picking me up from school, um, he ended up actually getting an emancipation court date. Um, and at that time, I was looking to go to the military, because I didn't see no other way out. So we went to court, and he presented to the judge that I wanted to go to the military. They all thought that it was a good idea because it would help with discipline and stability and teach me, I guess, how to be independent and take care of myself. So they awarded the emancipation.
So they allowed him to stand up in the courts for you after someone had reported him, and called the police on him?
Yes. Now the detectives didn't show up until I was in the facility, but it was after the hearing.
Okay.
Um, so I guess they talked to my grandmother and she told them where I was. I don't know. So we went to the emancipation hearing. They agreed to it, but in order for them to transition me after getting emancipated to independent living, was that I had to have family counseling. They felt it was very important because it was so much trauma that it was stuff that me and my mother needed to work out. I knew that was never going to happen because my mother was still battling her addiction and she wasn't going to show up. So I ended up being in the facility for like 8, 9 months. No therapy, no nothing. The staff members, they was going out buying me plates and cups and silverware and all of this stuff to try to help me prepare to be on my own when really I was never going anywhere. So, in the midst of them, in the midst of them putting stuff in storage and getting me prepared, I had my GED by the time I got there. So, um, when the other kids would go to school, I would stay back with the staff members because I wasn't in school. Um, so the doorbell rang and the staff members came and told me that there were two detectives that wanted to talk to me. I thought someone had died. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't even know he had got reported or anything. So they came in these suits and they asked me, did I know who the man was? They showed me a picture of him. I told him yes. I explained how I know him and how long he's been in me and my family's life. And they proceeded to ask me, was anything going on inappropriate? And at that point, like this man just saved me from the system. So I didn't say anything because it's like I'm free because of him. And I knew that the stuff he was doing to me was wrong, but it's like my family did me wrong too, but they didn't even try to save me. So I don't know. I just didn't say anything. Um, I didn't say anything,
You felt
and
like
that's
you did something because he helped you get emancipated, even though you knew what he was doing was wrong.
yeah.
Miss B? Um, Maybe she needs to get herself together. You know, emotions fly when you're talking about life and the things that you've been through in life. You know, it's challenging to discuss the things, just like it's challenging for some people to tune into it and hear it. You know, and for me, I like to get the full story, all of the story, so that way it can inspire and motivate other people, and other people can see, you know, the things that she's been through in life and understand that, you know, this is the reason why she is strong. This is the reason why she keeps going every day, is because, you know, she has to. You know, life didn't give her, you know, the opportunity to have the room to have that family, the people around her to really encourage and inspire her and motivate her to keep going after everything. But she continued to go after everything that she wanted. And, you know, I hope I can get her back on so we can finish this story as to where she is now in life, you know, through all the trials and tribulations and things that she has been through.